Israel would want peace tomorrow with its neighbors if its neighbors just said, okay, we want peace with you too. But they don't.
So I would just interject here to say that I believe that Bibi Netanyahu has a different agenda. And I think what gives a lot of people pause, people that are agnostic on this issue, is when you say something that feels like a very easy moral question, like, do you believe every Palestinian should be killed in an effort to get 250 hostages?
How do you moderate and then like sit there and interject whenever you want? That's clearly just propping up one side of the argument. Like, it's just, but then like, how do you think the families of those people that are kidnapped are supposed to feel? Like, that's what, like, what do you think they're supposed to do? So like what? Like, oh, you know, look, I understand your mom, your husband, or your daughter was kidnapped. But if we was to sit there and try to get them back, right? Because they don't want to negotiate. They're not going to sit there and give us a means of getting them back without violence. If we was to sit there and try to go and get her by force, we would kill 3 people. And, you know, to sit there and kill 3 people for just your daughter. I'm sorry, your daughter's hold. Your daughter's hold, right? Is that the answer we give? Let me. Okay, so I guess we are going to actually do this. I'm going to be really interested in seeing this. Yeah, I guess.
This summer, embrace the feeling of coming home. Come be inspired by Utah's
Meaningful discussion. And if anything, what I want you to take away is that speech matters. More speech, not less. That's what we have coming up on Candace.
Your position, not see that or side with that. And I know you haven't fully condemned Israel fully, but like, and I've seen other interviews where you do defend what Israel's, the virtues of Israel. But at the same time, I always find that very surprising, because the values that you uphold and say are fighting for on behalf of the Palestinians, it doesn't seem to me that their regimes that represent them, and a lot of people in those populations, don't uphold those values.
I mean, so far they're just okay. I like that they're making like each of their positions very clear, and they're doing it like without like immediate like grandstanding. So okay, so like, I mean, so far so good. So I'm just waiting for like them to start actually like hashing out like the disagreements, and then we can actually see what's going on
themselves, or those desires themselves. So seeing it through a Western American lens, there's a hierarchy of values here, and it seems that the real motivating factor in this war is it's not a geographical or political dispute or a conflict that presumes two sides are fighting as moral equals, but rather an ideological one in which Israel is fighting regimes that are genocidal, that wish to see its destruction because it's a Jewish state, because of not just it as a Jewish state, but Jews worldwide, and they've been very explicit about that. So it confuses me that we impose this idea that everybody just wants the same thing, and we have to just work this out, as a geographical dispute with all of that messy history. What's always seemed to me been animating this before any occupation of any territory even existed was a deep-seated hatred for Jews, the Jewish people, and the Jewish state. So even if people critical of Israel aren't anti-Jewish, the people Israel's directly fighting certainly are.
Okay, that is interesting. So I only want to say that because I did have, and I'm interjecting here, I did have a conversation with someone who.
Hold on. Didn't she say she was going to interject as little as possible? Oh, okay. All right. Well, okay, here we go. I mean, this is exactly what I was asking for. Okay.
Whose parents were forced out in, I want to say 1945, is that the correct year?
48, yeah.
And it definitely, I don't think every person that has an issue with Israel is being guided necessarily by this idea that it's just Jewish people. I mean, some of these people were actually living there and had accepted Jewish refugees into their home. One Palestinian is coming to mind, Mohammed Hadid, who they were allowing these refugees to live there for 2 years. They went out one day, came back, and the locks were changed. And they said, this is, again, I'm telling you what Mohammed Hadid told me, you're not allowed to come back here. Your home is being taken over. If you come back, they will shoot you and kill you. So I think some people are being motivated by what they perceive to be the historical injustice. Do you think that that's a fair assessment to say that some people aren't just looking at this as these are the Jews, or looking at this as these are people who took it?
George W. Bush is not as brutal as Saddam Hussein, therefore I have some solidarity with him. It's like, no, he's destroying a nation of people. He has no right to do this. And by the way, he's also greatly degrading my country. Now, as far as the rest of your characterization of Israel, I think it's totally unfair and not in line with the history, and it's kind of circular reasoning.
Like you don't have a right to go into another country and kill millions of people. I mean, like, I'm sorry that war isn't like pretty, but like if you suffer an attack, I'm sorry, like they're not, it's not like they're intentionally going out of their way at all times to kill the civilians. Like, that's just the way war is. Like this idea that like war has to be, that war is supposed to be held a certain kind of way, like it's not real. It's just truly not real. Oh God, bro, why is this shit not okay? There we go. It's not real. Like they're not even killing, like, what's the death toll? What's the death toll right now for out there? Like what? Like death toll in Gaza 2 days ago. 37,000, right? You're not allowed to kill me. Like 37,000. It's not even like something to compare. Like this sounds pretty well in line with like a military conflict that's in like a highly densely populated area. Like I'm sorry that like you don't like that, just like the that it's just war period, but like this is just how it is. Like to say that you don't have a right after you've been attacked is like just crazy to me.
You're like, well, but don't you, Israel's the good guy, so how come you don't support the good guy? Wouldn't you be more sympathetic to them because they're the good guy? It's like, well, no, but look, Israel is not a Western democracy. They're just not. They don't get to play this card anymore. Israel took control of the West Bank and Gaza in 1967. They haven't occupied them for a few months after a war or even a few years after the war. They've occupied them for nearly 60 years, for longer than the Soviet Union occupied all of Eastern Europe. And none of the people in those territories have any voting rights whatsoever. So how do you call yourself a democracy? By the way, I don't even...
And that's just, now that I would say that's just because of laziness. I don't know, well, laziness and just bitterness. But that's, I like, to be fair, that's a bit on the Palestinian side. Like at any point in time, like if on the Palestinian side, like they had leadership that was actually like legit about making peace and like accepting, for example, like the OG partition plan, then Israel would have been forced to then have to accept what was being offered, or accept the terms of the deal, and then have to completely end all hostilities and then start breaking apart its control over Palestine. And obviously you can argue that this was never something this was never something that truly was in the ultimate interests of the Jewish nation, but they wouldn't have had a choice, right? Because it's really hard to, I mean, to what, fight another nation that just wants nothing but peace and actively seeks peace, right? Would look crazy bad, and you lose all support from international communities. This is fundamental. We know this, but that. Every time one of those conflict things came up and happened, that just gave them an excuse to actually just be like, oh, all right, you don't want to accept this, and you want to attack or protest or whatever. Okay, good. We can slowly chip away at more territory and real estate, and just keep pushing this issue down the road until what, right? Until something happens, and then here we are, October 6th. Okay, I think I can get right here.
Not that into democracy.
I understand.
I don't really care about voting rights. My beef is that they have no natural rights whatsoever. But you don't get to just hold 5 million people captive for nearly 60 years with no voting rights and claim to be a democracy. That's an apartheid regime. And so I don't listen. The fact is, and many, just to your other point, because there were a few there.
Sure. On October 7th, who invaded who? And did they invade occupied territory, or did they invade sovereign kibbutzim of individuals and deliberately target their civilians because they were Jews? Let's remember, the terrorist that called his parents on October 7th, and they have an audio recording of it, saying, mommy, daddy, he didn't say, I got our house back, I got our property back, guess what, I liberated Palestine. He said, Mom, Dad, I killed 10 Jews with my bare hands. And they scream in pride and elation. They took Israeli babies that are still being held hostage today. The reason...
that, and that's just another big thing too, right? It's just that one of the other unfortunate realities too is that it's also hard, obviously you want to put the focus on Hamas, but the thing is, it's just there's quite a lot of support for Hamas and the general population. And then I mean, I guess you can argue that on one hand, right, that's just unavoidable because they seem to be the only entity willing to fight and take extreme measures, because let's not pretend the Palestinian issue is not a shitty, there's just not a shitty situation. It really is crazy, just the kind of living conditions that they just had for so many years, just because the ultimate solution of trying to figure out a way to get these people to accept some kind of deal so that everybody can go about their own separate way. I mean, that's just, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it just is what it is. So I don't know. It's a good point to be made, but they're just gonna say that, just how do you think, again, how do you think a group of people that were just oppressed, how do you think they were just going to turn out? And then you can't have this thing where it's just then you reward these people for committing the heinous act, and then now and now they start getting things what they want, because then that reinforces a lot of things that you probably you probably don't want you don't want reinforced for sure. And I think I'll go like right here. All right, so let's just.
And they're doing it because they're animated by Jew hatred. And I think to be naive to that is incredibly dangerous. Animated. They took Israeli babies that are still being held hostage today. The reason they're doing it because they're animated by Jew hatred. And I think to be naive to that is incredibly dangerous. And it misses the entire motivation behind what Israel's facing. This occupation of these places that you mentioned, first of all, Israel leaving Gaza in 2005, 2006, leaving it to every effort, in other words, for Israel to give land back and minimize what you call the occupation, which I think is a false term, and we can talk about that, because occupation refers to one sovereign nation illegally occupying an existing sovereign nation, of which there was no such thing when it came to Palestine. I know the geography was called Palestine, and I say that just as a point of reference to say that a lot of the language in this conversation is deceptive. It's not just a propagandistic talking point, but I think saying terms like that gives people this false narrative impression that a sovereign state of Palestine that was independent and had its own leadership and its own independence was usurped by Israel in what you alluded to today. In the Islamic world, going back to the beginning, if you go to protests today and you hear chants in Arabic, they're not saying two states side by side, liberation for the West Bank for a free state of Palestine alongside Israel. They're saying Khaybar, Khaybar, Yar Yahud. And what is that reference to? Khaybar, Khaybar, Yar Yahud? The Battle of Khaybar, in which Muhammad came across the Jews and he gave them a choice: convert to Islam or submit and become dhimmis and second-class citizens. And this is what's animated the entire region and the expulsion of Jews throughout all of the Arab countries.
I can't wait to start.
So
Like I said, I finished reading like the whole Bible, and like I am planning on fairly soon doing the Dead Sea Scrolls and then like doing the Quran. It's gonna be. I'm almost certainly probably gonna live stream those, so I can't wait for that, because I think like those reads are gonna be like really good. I mean the Bible was like something like I wanted to be able to do. Like I if I had thought about the streaming thing before, I probably would have did it like that live too. But I just think like actually reading it, like if we actually sit there and actually like go find the text and actually go and then like read it and see like what's actually being said and like how these things are interpreted, especially the stories. I think we'll get a lot of good information out of it. I think so anyway. Let me I do want to just put the color real quick. Let me see how good is everything producing. Okay, I mean there's a good steady stream. Wait, am I losing power? No, I'm not losing power. Why does it just like shrink like that? Or is it just because of the occasional, like it just makes stuff and then it has to like power up to like build? That's probably what it is. Yeah, because it just needs 2 sands. Okay. Interesting. Okay, and it looks like, yeah, like my sand production looks like it's keeping up pretty well. There's no issues there. Coal, right? Oh, well, yeah, I got a whole like little unit just dedicated to it, so it looks good. And oh yeah, so now like the stuff's starting to back up now. But okay, so I actually look like I might be able to get away with a third one, maybe. Although like I think like an issue though, I think it's just that the conveyor belt may not be fast enough, but I don't want to start sitting there and really start converting everything to titanium conveyor belts. But all right, let's get back to this.
Jewish safety in the region I think is super important and not to be discounted. And my fundamental point is that I do not think it's occupation that leads to terrorism. It's terrorism that leads to occupation. In other words, the only reason these things perpetuate is because Israel is continually attacked. And if you want the solution to stop, you have to have goodwill on the Palestinian side to commit to not wanting to kill the Jews in Israel and attack them. And I think leaving Gaza in 2005 was a perfect example of that. What did happen? I know you've heard these points before, Dave, that greenhouses and infrastructure were left there. Hamas takes over, kills their political opponents, fellow Muslims, Fatah, and establishes a terrorist state using all the international aid and funding to fire rockets and attack at Israel. Invade Israel on October 7th, breaking a ceasefire. So accountability. I'm not denying suffering of what you're talking about for local populations, but who's accountable for that? And at a certain point, you can't say Israel is.
Okay, so thank you so much. And I want to ask a question back to you, Ami. Dave, I know you're going to have a lot to respond to with that, but again, I want to be very clear. Of the three of us, I know the least about the history, which is why I think it's important to let you two talk. I do keep hearing this point over and over again that, it wasn't a state, meaning like, this was just some territory, but people lived here, and my family is St. Thomian, and I just think, they've lived in generations upon generations in St. Thomas. It's not officially a state, it's a U.S. territory.
She's gonna ask good questions. I thought she was gonna ask questions. She's gonna let these two debate. Like it's clearly like what she's setting up. Like she just because she's so against it. She's so she's so inherently against it, right? She just cannot help herself, because when he sits there and he starts making good points, like that's what he's there for, right? He's there to argue that point. You're there to moderate. Why are you sitting there and you're interjecting yourself into and then you seem to keep interjecting yourself on the other side? Like, it's just, I bet, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if he already knew what was up, and this is just
So
how it
in
is.
your thought process, I guess we're talking about Puerto Rico, we're talking about St. Thomas, that if the U.S. wanted to right now, they could say, hey, we're giving St. Thomas to Jewish people in Israel, give up your houses, we're not going to give you any money, get out or you'll get shot. And then your thought process is, hey, listen, you're not a nation. Like, you're not a nation.
No.
It's like this, I know you've been living here for a long time.
No, that's no. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Ottoman Empire at the time, right? The Ottoman Empire like allowed them to buy this land, and then they said that that if you wanted to like kick those people off, you had to basically like pay them, like, I guess something that would be like akin to reparations or something. Like, I don't know like the specific details, but what I just do know is that they did actually go through the proper way of acquiring that land, acquiring that the initial bulk of land that they did get, that the Palestinians were sitting in. Like it's the unfortunate reality is that the Ottoman Empire kind of just like sold them out on that, and then when the Ottoman Empire collapsed, I mean, it's just like that shit was just like all over the place. So I'd be really curious to see how he breaks it down, because that's like my rough understanding of it.
Could you clarify
Sure.
that? I don't want to misrepresent.
I'm not saying that, and I'm not saying I think the whole essence of creating Israel in a 1947 partition plan was that there were native peoples living there, Jewish and Arab alike, and no one disputes that native people live there. I'm simply dispelling a false narrative, and I think a lot of people fall into that who aren't informed on this issue when you talk to people, that there was this prosperous, free, independent state of Palestine with its own sovereignty, not in the context of under a British mandate and previously under an Ottoman Empire, and at a time when the whole region was being carved up by the Western powers and figuring out what to do with the native peoples where there was tension. I'm not disputing that they.
And again, this is why I tell you guys, right? Like, why war? Like people just don't like what ends up in war, right? If your country was part of a war and it was on the loser side and it loses, like, then if the winning war powers like want to sit there and just take your land and just like kick you out, like, it is what it is. Like, I'm sorry, that's just the reality of it. Like, I'm sorry, it sucks. It really does suck, and like it's something that you know typically probably wouldn't be okay in you know today's standard. But like at the end of the day, I mean, the war is war. War is war. That's just how it is in war. Nothing you can do about it.
But I'm saying it to be very precise in getting the history and figuring out what to do with the native peoples where there was tension. I'm not disputing that they were present, but I'm saying it to be very precise in getting the history right, because I think it's often misrepresented, and I don't know what Dave feels about that, but I'm being very particular and narrow in specifying that.
I am going to have
think
to like
a lot
push
of
the
this
sand out a
conversation
little
about this topic
faster.
is so co-opted by false words and language that's very confusing and deceptive.
But you would agree that telling people that have purchased a home and are living there irrespective of the politics that they have to get out without even giving them money, because I actually was very surprised when they didn't get anything in return. I thought maybe they wrote them a check and were like, get out. I think we would all principally agree that first thing is wrong morally. Do you agree with that or not really?
Yeah, I can understand that position, but I'm just saying at the time, the reason for a refugee crisis, and we can debate the history and our accounts of this, is that if you accept that there's also a Jewish legitimate claim to the ancestral homeland in Israel and a priority to create a Jewish safe haven for Jews.
Oh, so he didn't say anything about that? I didn't get paid. Like, I could have swore, like, I could have swore that like when well, maybe the very initial carve out, maybe, but no, but that wouldn't make any sense, right? Okay, we do have to, we gotta it'll take like a really simple Google search, right? Did Jews buy land from Ottomans? In 1880s, Jews predominantly Ashkenazi began purchasing land and properties across Ottoman Palestine in order to expand collective territorial ownership of the issue. This is what my understanding was. Oh, but it happened before. It happened before World War II, right? Because World War II was like what, 1933? When was, right? Yeah, 1939, right? Start date was like 1939, right? So yeah, right? So they started. Yeah, so they started. That's what I'm saying. Like, my understanding was that the Jews were like officially buying land from the Ottoman Empire, like well before then. And then like after like World War II, I mean, the Ottoman Empire collapsed. So then it was just like shit. You know, shit's up for, you know. That's it. But there was like stipulations on it, right? Like you know, if you're gonna kick these people off the land that you're buying because we're trying to raise money, and this is why we're letting you buy the land, right? You have to pay these people, which they did do, right? In the 1880s, Jews, predominantly Ashkenazi, began purchasing land and properties across Ottoman Palestine in order to expand the collective territorial ownership of the yeshiva. Large Jewish corporations and private Jewish buyers led this effort through multiple intermittent transactions that continued after mandatory Palestine was established in 1918. The largest of these arrangements, known as the Sursock Purchase, resulted in the procurement of Jezreel Valley and the Bay of Haifa, if that's how you say it, Haifa. By the 1930s, the purchase of land was often accompanied by the eviction of Arab tenants. On 1 April 1945, the British administration statistics showed that Jewish buyers had legal ownership over approximately 5.67% of the mandate's total land area, while state-owned domain was 46%. By the end of 1947, Jewish ownership had increased to 6.6%. This cycle of land acquisition ultimately ended when the Israel Declaration of Independence yielded the founding of the Jewish state on 14 May 1948. So, the mandatory, where's that? Had of the mandate's total land area. So, I read this. I don't know too much about like the actual specifics on the mandate. But it sounds like to me that of the land that the mandate carved them, they already owned a small portion of it. And it says while state-owned domain was 46%. I do wonder what this means. Stop, man. Get out of my way. By sub-district, village statistic, land ownership in Palestine. Yeah. Oh. Towards the end of the 19th century, the creation of the Zionist movement resulted in many Jews immigrating to Palestine. Most land purchases between the 1880s and 1930s were located in coastal plain area, including the Acre to the north and Rehoboth to the south, the Australian and Jordan valleys, and to the lesser extent in Galilee. These were mostly the less inhabited coasts and valleys which had high rates of malaria. The migration affected Palestine in many ways, including economic, social, and political. The Talmud mentions the religious duty of settling the land of Israel. It also allows for the lifting certain religious restrictions of Sabbath observance to further its acquisition and settlement. Wait, they were allowed to like ignore the Sabbath? The Talmud is the central text of rabbinic Judaism and the primary source of Jewish religious law and Jewish theology until the advent of modernity. Because I want to say nitty, but that's not it. Modernity. Modernity. I guess that's how you say it, right? In nearly all Jewish communities, in Talmud was the centerpiece of Jewish cultural life and was foundation to all. That's crazy. Like it sounds crazy to me that there was you were allowed to like lift the religious restriction of the Sabbath. That's crazy. History and purchase policies. In the first half of the 19th century, no foreigners were allowed to purchase land in Palestine. This was official Ottoman Empire policy until 1956 and in practice until 1867. When it came to the national aspirations of the Zionist movement, the Ottoman Empire opposed the idea of Jewish self-rule in Palestine. I'll say up front though, Jews, so that I don't get too sidetracked. It's just that, yeah. So I think like the big sticking point is just the mandate, because the mandate gave them a significant more a lot more land than what they were slowly in the process of acquiring. Let's see. The Ottoman Empire opposed the idea of Jewish self-rule in Palestine, fearing it might lose control of Palestine after recently having lost other territories to various European powers. It also took issue with the Jews, as many came from Russia, which sought the empire's demise. Interesting. In 1881, Ottoman governmental administration decreed that foreign Jews could immigrate to and settle anywhere within the Ottoman Empire except in Palestine, and from 1882 until their defeat in 1918, the Ottomans continuously restricted Jewish immigration and land purchases in Palestine. In 1892, the government decided to prohibit the sale of land in Palestine to Jews, even if they were Ottoman citizens. Nevertheless, during the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, many successful land purchases were made through organizations such as that and the Jewish National Fund. The Ottoman Land Code of 1858 brought about the appropriation by the influential and rich families of Beirut, Damascus. Damascus wasn't that like Syria? I think, maybe. And to a lesser extent, Jerusalem and Jaffa and other sub-district capitals of vast tracts of land in Syria and Palestine, and their registration in the name of these families and the land registers. According to Palestine American anthropologists, in 1858, the Ottoman Empire introduced the law of taboo to fix rights of ownership of the land. Landowners were instructed to have their properties inscribed in the land register. The taboo was resisted by the Fellahin. They saw a threat to their community in registering their land for two main reasons. One, the cultivated fields were classified as Armda Emiria. I don't even know how you pronounce that. The land of the emirate, and were taxed. And two, well, and owners are registered for the land were first to pay a tax on it. And then two, data from the land register were used by the Turkish army for the purpose of the draft. Ownership of registered lands were often drafted to fight with the Turkish army in Russia. In 1918, after the British conquest of Palestine, the military administration closed the land register and prohibited all sale of land. Register was reopened in 1920, but to prevent speculation and ensure a livelihood of the Fellahin, an edict was issued forbidding the sale of more than 300 dunams of land or the sale of land valued at more than 3,000 Palestine pounds without the approval of the High Commission. From the 1880s to the 1930s, excuse me. Most Jewish land purchases were made in the coastal plain, the Jezreel Valley, the Jordan Valley, and to the lesser extent the Galilee. This was due to a preference for land that was cheap and without tenants. There were two main reasons why these areas were sparsely populated. The first being when the Ottoman power in the rural areas began to diminish in the 17th century. Many people moved to more centralized areas to secure protection against Bedouin tribes. Yeah, because I do remember, I think they had like what do they call it, barbarian? Like it was like a barbarian type-ish thing that was going on back then. And then the second reason for the sparsely populated areas in the coast plain was the soil type. The soil covered in a layer of sand made it impossible to grow the staple crop of Palestine, corn. As a result, this area remained uncultivated and underpopulated. A sparse Arab population in the areas where the Jews usually bought their land enabled the Jews to carry out their purchase without engendering a massive displacement and eviction of Arab tenants. In the 1930s, most of the land was bought from landowners. Of the land that the Jews bought, 52.6% were bought from non-Palestinian landowners, 24.6% from Palestinians, 13% from the government, churches, and foreign companies, and only 9% from Fellahin, which is farmers. And then here, which this would be post-World War II now, out of the 1,000 and whatever dunams of land owned by Palestine by large Jewish corporations and private owners, about 44% was in possession of Jewish National Fund. Or maybe was this until 1940 or 1945? Okay, so this is like a year out before like the end of World War II. So this might have been like when, okay, so this is probably well after the Ottoman Empire had fell, and I think now we was just kind of like focusing on Japan. Probably. I don't know. I don't remember like this specific points, specific year points in of World War II for sure. But okay, so like this, but this is getting to the cusp of like the end of World War II. So I do believe Britain already owned like or already had control of the land. Jewish corporations and private owners, about 44% in possession of Jewish National Fund. The table below shows the land ownership of Palestine by large Jewish corporations in square kilometers. By the end of the mandate, more than half the Jewish owned land was held by the two largest Jewish funds. Blah, blah, blah. By the end of the British Mandate period in 1948, Jewish farmers had cultivated over 400,000 dunams of land, while Arab farmers had 5 million dunams of land under cultivation. And then here we go, Peel Commission in 1936. Okay, so this is still, well, it's 1935. Peel Commission was in 1936, but the World War II started in 1939. British government appointed a Peel Commission to investigate the reasons for the civil unrest in Palestine. Lord Peel's findings on land purchase were as follows. Okay, so maybe I guess they were just like doing some investigative work. Okay. A summary of land legislation enacted during the civil administration shows the efforts made to fulfill the mandatory obligation in this matter. The commission point to serious difficulties in connection with the legislation, excuse me, proposed by the Palestine government for the protection of small owners. The Palestine Order and Council, and if necessary, the mandate should be amended to permit of legislation empowering the High Commissioner to prohibit the transfer of land in any state area to Jews, so that the obligation to safeguard the right and position, of the Arabs may be carried out. Until survey and settlement are complete, the Commission would welcome the prohibition of the sale of isolated and comparatively small plots of land to Jews. Up until now, the Arab cultivator has benefited on the whole, both from the work of the British administration and the presence of Jews in the country, but the greatest care must now be exercised to see that in the event of further sales of land by Arabs to Jews, the rights of any Arab tenants or cultivators are preserved. Yeah, right? Because like I think like whatchamacallit, like you had this really like I want to say like in today's terms, like it would be, I guess the closest you could find would be like a renter, right? Like you had this issue back then. My understanding is that like you had people that owned the land, and these people were completely separate from the people that lived on this land. And so like there was this issue where like basically the owners would just be like, you know what, fuck it. Like here, look, I'll sell this piece of land to you. And then like either I don't remember if either then Israel had to like give something or pay something to the people that were on that land in order to get them off, or if they could just outright just kick them off. But I do recall that being like a quite a bit of contention, and like the way you can just relate that to today's terms would be like the whole renter thing, right? Because like if you're renting an apartment or whatever, right, and like the owners of that building sell that building to somebody else because they don't want it no more, right? Well, like I do believe like U.S. laws and stuff, like as far as your lease is concerned, you don't have to worry about your lease. Like them just coming up and being like, yeah, we're breaking your lease and we're kicking you out. However, once your lease is up, my guy, if they're not saying they're going to renew it, you gotta go. Like that's just the unfortunate reality of it. That's just like the other people don't own the building no more. This other set of people do, and it's like, you know, as far as like, you know, rights and privileges is, you know, they own it, you don't. Right, you're just a renter. You're I guess in that sense like technically a squatter. And so the moment your lease is up, they can kick you out, and then they can do whatever it is they work. Which is what I believe what was happening with like affordable homes, right? Affordable apartments being bought up, and then they were waiting for these people's leases to like come up due. Kick them out. Be like, yeah, we're not renewing the lease. You got to go find, you know, housing somewhere else. Kick them out, and then once everybody was out, they would like tear it down or renovate it, whatever, to make the buildings really nice, and then let renters come back in, but then charge, you know, super higher rent, right? So like if you bought a building where like it was going for like let's say like an apartment, like a 1-bedroom apartment was like $800-900, right? Just to give you a number, right? Then like after the renovations are done, then it's like $2,500. like that's like that, like to about that extent is like what was like it was happening a lot. Was it a year ago? It was like a year or two ago. I believe it was like a year or two ago where that was happening a lot. I want to say like I can't remember what specific states. I think New York was one of them. But yeah, like that's just, I mean, that's just the unfortunate thing. And it's like I personally, I wouldn't necessarily like blame the Jews on that. I mean, that's just like I said, like the whole that whole Arabian like structure was just kind of just like crazy. And then like I said, then when the Ottoman Empire like collapsed or like, you know, disintegrated, I mean, you had no protections. Like you know, this is the thing, like whether it's right or wrong, like in war, bro, like you're subjected to whatever the winner wants. He won, you didn't. Like it is what it is. Like that it would happen anywhere. It literally would happen anywhere, right? Like Russia has control over X and X territory and sat there and like and you know, I mean, you know, annexed it, right? And so like, you know, if Russia, if Ukraine doesn't take it back, right? That shit is Russia, and Russia is then able to do whatever the hell they want with that land. If they wanted to sit there and they want to kick everybody that like identifies or feels some type of way for Ukraine and not Russia and kick them out, they can do that. Like that's the rule of law. That's the rule of war. So let me just finish this and we get back to this. But the greatest care must now be exercised to see that in the event of further sales of land of Arabs, Jews, and the rights of the Arab tenants or cultivators are preserved. Thus, alienation of land should only be allowed where it is possible to replace extensive by intensive cultivation. It is possible to replace extensive by intensive cultivation. Okay. In the hill districts, there can be no expectation of finding accommodation for any large increase in the rural population. At present, and for many years to come, the mandatory power should not attempt to facilitate the closed settlement of the Jews in the Hill District generally. The shortage of land is due less to purchase by Jews than to the increase in the Arab population. The Arab claims that the Jews have obtained too large a portion of good land. Whoa, what is this grammar? The Jews have obtained too large a portion of good land cannot be maintained. Too large a portion, good land cannot be maintained. Much of the land now carrying orange groves was sand dunes or swamps and uncultivated when it was bought. That's what I'm saying. Like I don't understand that argument. Like they were buying land that was like basically desolate. Legislation investing surface water in the High Commissioner is essential. An increase in staff and equipment of exploratory investigations with a view of increasing irrigation is recommended. And this was the report in 1937. We know World War II started in 1939. So, I mean, like, just at that point, it could just, it's a wrap. Economic impact. The Falala who sold land in an attempt to turn vegetable tracts into citrus groves became dependent on world markets and the availability of maritime transportation. A decrease in world market demand for citrus or a lack of meat transportation severely jeopardized the economic situation of these people. Okay, yeah, so that's cool. Concessions in mandatory Palestine, or a number of monopolies for the operation of key economic assets in mandatory Palestine. Okay, yeah, this is all cool stuff to read. But
Jews, given what had happened to Jews historically in Nazi Germany and the Arab world, not at the expense of local populations and to displace them. The reason they were displaced is because of a refusal to accept the Jewish state and Jewish.
Okay, now we need to metal glass.
Attack from the surrounding Arab nations with the aim of destroying the Jewish state, not with the aim of creating free Palestine.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying that. And I want to let you, Dave, now reply. I know, sorry, he said a lot, and I just wanted to, because I'm learning with you guys, so I'm kind of going to ask questions.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, as far as the idea that there wasn't a Palestinian state, I do find this to just be one of the weakest arguments. I mean, human beings have natural rights. This is the foundation of Western civilization, is that your rights are not derived from whether or not you have a government, and that people were there. People were...
Okay, hold up. What is he talking about? Like, is he about to make that classical argument about, human rights? Human rights doesn't say anything about property, right? Because in order to protect those human rights, you got to have a government. If you don't have a government or some form of agency to protect those human rights, to protect those particular rights that aren't human rights, you have a human right. What is it? Life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness, right? And like, I'm sorry, land ownership isn't one of them. And like, you're subjected to your objected to the wilderness of humanity. So like, what is this argument he's getting ready to sit here and make?
I mean, as far as the idea that there wasn't a Palestinian state, I do find this to just be one of the weakest arguments. I mean, human beings have natural rights. This is the foundation of Western civilization, is that your rights are not derived from whether or not you have a government, and that people were there. People were living in those homes. They had homesteaded the area. They had property rights. They had natural rights, and they were violently evicted from the place that they had been living.
Property rights from who? Who do they have natural property rights from? Like these are not protectable. These are not protectable rights, especially if the government. Especially like the government entity like disintegrated. Like, I'm sorry, like it's just like your rights only go so far as as the government that's willing to defend them for you
for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, and that's wrong. And this is there's really no.
And as far as my understanding of it is, Palestine didn't. That Palestinian entity did not have it. They did not have it. I'm sorry, like.
Because even if some of them just fled, which is true, some of them fled, some of them were violently evicted, some of them fled because they saw how violently evicted others were, but they weren't allowed to return, and Israel had no right to do that.
But Dave, do you agree that there didn't exist? I just to get clarification. Do you agree that there didn't exist a sovereign state of Palestine in the way we recognize countries today?
Yeah,
that's a debatable point. Yes, that's true.
I think a lot of people think that. I think a lot of people do think that.
But I'm saying I think it's completely irrelevant.
So,
but yes, it's true that there wasn't a sovereign government known as Palestine. They were ruled by the British under the League of Nations mandate, and then before that, for 400 years or so, they were ruled by the Ottoman Empire. All of that is irrelevant to me, and especially in the United States of America, it's just kind of, like this was like the Putin logic that he opened.
Wait. Why is that irrelevant to you in the United States? This isn't nothing to do inside of the United States. This is to do with other countries outside of the United States. So why would irrelevance within the U.S. even matter? That's crazy.
There's something about, like who has historic claim over these different territories. I guess the British have historic claim over us, but we don't care because we wrote the Declaration of Independence and said, screw you. We're not doing that anymore. We have rights. God gave them to us. But there's a bunch of stuff here.
Which we were willing to fight and defend those rights, and we was able to militarily compete and and fight them off. What? But again, that's inherently different. Oh, you know what? Never mind. Why am I getting worked up over it?
Again, the question isn't whether they had a state or not. The question is that Israel has been militarily occupying these people. Now, in 1947, when the UN had their partition recommendation, they made a recommendation. The General Assembly had no authority whatsoever to just go around carving up countries and deciding whose territory was what. They made a recommendation. And then the Zionist settlers decided to violently enforce that. Now, obviously, the Palestinians rejected it, and for very legitimate reasons. In hindsight, maybe it would have been better if they accepted that, maybe not. However, they were granted 54% of the land in this recommendation. After the war in 1948, they took 78% of the land. After the war in 1967, they took 100% of it. What every single peace proposal has been based around, going all the way back to the first Camp David, through the Oslo Accords, through Camp David in 2000, to every time there's been a serious negotiation about a two-state solution, it's always been that last 22%. You're talking about Gaza and the West Bank. No one, aside from what some dumb college student might be hollering, or what someone on Twitter might say, there has never been a serious conversation about from the river to the sea, about the Palestinians actually even the right of return stuff is always whittled down to a very small number of Palestinians who could maybe come back to where they used to live. But we're talking about the final 22% that Israel has absolutely no claim to. No claim.
That's what Hamas and Mahmoud Abbas believe, from the river to the sea. That's what Israel's fighting. I'm sorry, I just want a clarification. Yeah,
okay, one second. Hamas has actually, in the past, said they recognize Israel under 1967 borders. That may not be what they're saying right now at the moment, but just to be clear, they have said that before. I'm not just talking about the dreams of some terrorist group that can never come true. Osama bin Laden also wanted worldwide Sharia law. That was probably going to happen.
Why could the desires of Hamas, who are the official government for the Palestinians, why would their wishes not be able to come true? What's the thing that's keeping that from becoming a reality? I'm curious.
Though. Okay, so anyway, this is what's been going on in every single negotiation. The entire global community, including every single United States president of
there's no lead around here.
No claim to that last 22%. It is not theirs. It's not theirs to give. It ought not be their decision whether the Palestinians get a state or not. It's not their territory. That's why they're the occupying force. Now, I just want to mention, because this is something that I know the pro-Israel side always loves to brag about, that we disengaged with Gaza in 2005. A little interesting note about that never very rarely comes up is that Benjamin Netanyahu resigned over the disengagement. This was in Sharon's government, and he resigned over it because he was so against it. So, by the way, the guy who's in there now, the longest serving prime minister in Israeli history, resigned over this disengagement.
Because it worked out so well, Dave, in the long run, to disengage?
He resigned when they did it.
Yeah, he was against doing it. And how did it work out to disengage from Gaza for Israel's security?
Why do you think they did it?
What's that?
Why did they do it?
Why did they disengage from Gaza?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They pulled out 8,000 people from Gaza because it wasn't worth the protection of that settlement to give an experiment in good faith and goodwill to see if a Palestinian state could be created. You can understand why they would be cautious when pulling out of Gaza. And look at what happened 18 years later. I think you're always starting the story in the middle. You're saying, well, they pulled out and they were cautious in securing the border and monitoring things, and that's what caused the terrorism. No, they were monitoring things because they were smuggling rockets into Israel in order to attack them and using all the aid and materials to build rockets and weapons to constantly attack and deliberately.
I don't remember him maybe bringing up the blockade, but yeah, we know that the blockade thing was had a true legitimate military purpose in it, because I think didn't this was a CNN person or somebody that was in there, and they had somebody show them how they were making the fuel for the rockets, and they were literally taking it was some food item, some food sugar item, and then they would sit there and melt it down. They would cook it to where you get this brown substance, and then you would pack it, and then I think they combined it with some type of fertilizer or something, right? And then there you go, right? Then you had a means of of a little makeshift rocket. Not sure was something. Okay, so I think I'm in a good position to be able to start making my metal glass here. Okay, so, but I'm also going to need more sand. So,
We have
oh yeah, I
governments that have a
forgot to put the
responsibility
thing
to
up,
seek out
right?
justice
Isn't
and
this
defend
the
their
part
citizens.
right?
And I would
Or
say
is it
it's not
something
just
else?
somebody committing a violent act against you,
Yeah,
but
this is the
threatening to
part
do so
right.
over and
I
over
could have
again and
been
under that duress
producing
of threat
pirates
of
the whole
violence
time.
is just as justified to defend yourself as actual violence in real time. Would you agree to that?
No, not necessarily.
If I put a gun
mean,
up and I say I'm going to shoot you and I'm
Yeah,
going to keep
yeah.
doing it, you have a right to defend yourself.
Right, but if a homeless guy on the street goes I'm gonna kill you and your whole family, and I just murder that guy, you'd be like, no, that's not justified just because he made some threat that he has no ability to follow through on.
right.
And so,
But
like, no,
just
it's not.
What? Like, what argument is that? Like, right? He has no, he has, like, based off of your assessment, he has, like, no means of potentially doing that. But that doesn't mean he can't he can't later on, like, acquire those means and then do it. Like, that's crazy. That is actually kind of crazy. That's kind of like, I'm not at all sure, like, why argue? Why make an argument like quite like that? Okay, cool. So those are being made there.
I can understand that, but I'm just to continue my point. It's not that they just commit this act and then go back to their business. If they stay in their family's house, outfit the windows of that house so that they can successfully shoot RPGs at soldiers trying to do special operations and trying to gather intelligence, and they use these houses and create military installations out of these homes, then you do have the right to. That is self-defense. And blaming Hamas for putting these people in harm's way, for implicating themselves and embedding themselves and exploiting that asymmetry. And Israel makes efforts to minimize civilian casualties, but it's not accountable to Israel to do that when it is fighting a war of defense.
First off, that does not describe the vast majority of the cases of people being killed in Gaza. But okay, in that hypothetical, I think the way you put it is an interesting one. They're exploiting that asymmetry.
Yes.
That's right, because this is an asymmetrical war. Okay, do you think Israel exploits the asymmetry at all? Do you think they exploit the fact that they have way more power than the Palestinians?
Dave, Israel, in terms of this claims about genocide and being leveled at Israel, which I think is a smear, just think about it this way. Israel could level the place tomorrow. They could have done it on October 8th and 9th and level the entire country. Again, they could do it, but they won't do it. And Hamas can't do it, but they would do it. If they had the military capacity, they would kill every Israeli tomorrow. Do you not agree with that?
Okay, so I just want to jump in here because I do want to ask a question about that because I have shown aerial footage. There have been...
Okay, hold on. As a moderator, what question could you possibly ask about that? Like, no. She's gonna try and, like, reinforce this point. That's what she's about to do.
Doctors Without Borders that have gone there, that have worked in tons of war zones and have written pieces saying that this is not a regular war. Like, it looks like they are raising the place. And when I see, again, of course, someone will always say that's propaganda here, but when I look at it, it does sort of look like they want these buildings fully collapsed, and then it doesn't.
Okay, they don't want the buildings fully collapsed, but if you got somebody shooting at you from said building and you can't sit there and kill them reliably without putting a significant amount of people in danger, you will destroy the building. Yes, like this is typical war stuff. This is typical basic war stuff. You best believe that if there's a sniper that I have identified shooting at me at said building, like, you best believe we will be sending some form of explosives into that building to kill them. Like, that's oh my God, bro.
It's not helpful.
Started migrating there. In this process, way before the beginning of the creation of Israel, it involved a whole bunch of Palestinians being kicked out of their homes. There was resistance to that. There was violence on both sides. When it culminated in the creation of the State of Israel, it resulted in 750,000 Palestinians being evicted from their land.
Can I respond?
After the 1967 war, Israel has occupied them ever since. And my argument is not that there's no bad guys on the Palestinian side or that they've never done anything wrong. My argument is that that is the fundamental issue. And if you're not talking about that, you're not having a serious conversation about this issue. In the same way that if you want to actually talk about 9/11, you have to talk about American foreign policy. If you don't acknowledge that, then you're not even really having a conversation about what's going on.
That understanding of the history, I think, is false. The way you just said it, that this
What was false?
Fundamentally, Israel is formed by all Eastern European Jews displacing the native populations there. Do you dispute that there's always been a Jewish presence in that part of the world? In Israel?
Of course
There has been. And that indigenous rights, and on that argument alone, that historically, Israel, that part of the world, the last actual state, and you could go back, I'm going back now to the 2,000 years argument that I know you don't like, but the point is that there is a connection between the Jewish people and Israel that goes back thousands of years. You don't deny that.
Yeah,
right?
sure, but,
Okay,
you don't get to claim a property right because you were somewhere 2,000 years ago.
I know, but I'm just let me finish the point because you're simply starting the story at this one element.
Like, but why wouldn't it matter though? If you're gonna sit there and complain that, like, like the Palestinians were there and then they got moved off their land, then where does that end? Because then you could say the same thing to like way far back in the past where the Jews were sitting there on that land. Like, it's just like it's. Oh my God! Like, see, like this is why, like, I can never understand, like, how they create these arguments.
You don't get to claim a property right because you were somewhere 2,000 years ago.
I know, but I'm just let me finish the point because you're simply starting the story at this one element of Jewish immigration to Israel and ignoring what about all the Jews in the Arab countries that were immigrating because they were kicked out and expelled and the efforts to purchase land from absentee landlords who were.
Sorry, I just want to jump in there because this is where it gets confusing because over time, Judaism used to be a religion, now it's a race, and now some people think it's an ethnic group. It's a bit confusing,
race,
right? It's not. You think it's not a race, okay? Because some people would say to be Jewish is to be a race.
They aggressed against Israel. It's their risk. You can't all of a sudden then complain when there's consequences for that. You have to be the ones.
I'm not complaining. I'm just trying to understand what you mean when you say until every last hostage. I just need like a yes or no. Does that mean that Bibi Netanyahu and the IDF have a right to kill every Palestinian if it means that they are able to secure their hostages? It's a very simple moral question.
It's not a simple moral question at all. I don't think they have a right to kill every single Palestinian, and gratuitous violence should be condemned. But they have a right to pursue them, and if Hamas keeps committing to keeping them in civilian homes, hidden among civilian populations, Israel has a right and obligation and responsibility to rescue them. I can't see how we don't agree on that.
Well, because the problem is there's a whole bunch of babies being killed.
So why don't you say Hamas give them back and stop?
No, not everyone wants the hostages returned. Sorry, so everybody wants the hostages returned. I just disagree with unconditionally. I think that's
so you think it's just to pursue them, but maybe you're disagreeing with the means.
Yes, I'm saying you can't kill every Palestinian to get back 250 Israelis. That's my position.
What? So then, what are you supposed to do? Like when you what? You like and then like what is this? Why making it seem like they're sitting there and they're like a lawnmower? They're just like grinding through like troves of actual like Palestinians in order to get to these hostages. Won't the ones they just rescued, didn't they have them hiding inside the camps? If the innocent die because of just because of where Hamas had chose to keep and keep the hostages, I mean it is what it is. Like that once again, right? This is what war is. Like they're not blowing through all like a mad ton of Palestinians. They're sitting there, they're waiting to see where they can find these people at, and then if Hamas choose to place them in places where they're around other other civilian lives, like then it's just like that doesn't mean that then you just get immunity where I'm not gonna do anything. Like that, to me that's crazy. To me that's really crazy.
The question becomes, if the primary goal here is to retrieve the hostages, which I do think should be Israel's primary goal, then what has led to them getting the vast majority of hostages back, not just in this conflict, but in the past? It's what we do when people take hostages right here in the United States of America. Someone runs into a bank and holds a few hostages. You know what we do? We don't start dropping bombs on the place. We don't go in spraying machine gun fire. We call in a person known as a negotiator. And you try your absolute best to negotiate the return of the hostages.
And then what happens when they don't negotiate? What happens when they do not negotiate? If they do not negotiate, then what do you think happens? Like this is crazy to me. Oh my gosh, man. I need more sand. I need more sand. Like this is crazy. We bring in the negotiators, and then if negotiations fail, what happens next? We sit there and we send people in to go get the hostages. That's what happens. That is what happens. Oh my god, bro. Like this is just so it's just so crazy. Like they I swear to you, like these people make this stuff seems like it's just so easy. That's not how war works. Like that's not at all how war works. I'm sorry. Like it just, or conflicts period do not like play out the way like these people make it seem like that shit with like Candace, when Candace was like God, what was his name? Pierce Morgan. When Pierce Morgan was like, do you think, with the Russia-Ukraine wars going on, who do you think, how do you think that's resolved? No, I think they should just stop fighting, and then the war is over. But like, that's not achievable. Oh, yes, it is. They could just all put their weapons down and then just be like, okay, we're going to stop fighting. Like I said, like you convincing me that this is that it has to be one way or I'm not going to listen to that. Like that was like her literal answer to like the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. That they just both stop fighting. That's just not going to happen. Like it's such a childish. It's just a childish like just naive like just way of just looking at it. Like that's so unrealistic. It's just it's really sad. It really is just like sad. Okay, cool. See, so now we're maxed out. Yeah, see, so now we're maxing out our sand input. But I am going to need to put, probably going to need to throw like one more drill here. Let's see if I can get, I might have to find a way to like kind of bump this up. Because if I add one more, I know it's not gonna. I have enough coal to like add another one of the silicon. I probably should add another one to silicon, but it's going to. I don't know if I have enough sand piping through. Let me think about this. I could. Okay, what I could do is but I would only get one more. At best, I would get one more One more turd into this. One more.
And this has been successfully done many times. It's a much, much better strategy than just slaughtering an insane amount of innocent people, which is going to do nothing but guarantee that there's more hatred and more terrorism in the future.
I think history disproves that whole outlook that this will create more terrorism in the future, because I think when you demonstrate to an aggressor that attacks you for ideological reasons, that to the extent that you support this ideology of hating the Jewish people and hating the Jewish state and wishing our destruction, to the extent that you buy into this, you will face the consequences of our military doing what it needs to do to defend itself against that. And if you keep
history disproves my point.
Yes.
Israel has been dominating militarily the Palestinians
it does prove
for
your point. If you look at
decades and
we
decades.
can go back to World War II, and we can go back to the fact that when you assert your, war is a ruthless, terrible thing. Can you imagine any sort of war where there isn't collateral damage or any civilians? Does that mean it's never just? Does that mean it's not just?
No, it doesn't mean it's always just.
But you said something interesting before, where you said, okay, Hamas, release them, but they're not going to release them. Does that still mean they're not accountable for what's to come when they don't do that?
No, Hamas ought to be accountable, but innocent Palestinians shouldn't be.
For the innocent Palestinians that die in the crossfire, I'm not denying that happens. Why are you not agreeing with me that Hamas is ultimately accountable for the escalation, for the perpetuation? In other words, all of us here hate the sight of dead Israelis, hate the sight of dead innocent Palestinians. So this whole idea of valuing one life over another, I'm with you on that. But I'm saying, you know who does like the sight of dead Palestinians? Hamas. They tell you that very explicitly. They love the sight.
So do a lot of Israelis. Yeah,
that's a false equivalency.
No, it's not. Why do you use this term? I didn't say they're the same thing. I didn't say they're equivalent. I said there's also a lot of Israelis
not
who like the sight.
not at all to the same degree. And a lot of the people killed, as I said, on October 7th were peace activists. Israel would want peace tomorrow with its neighbors if its neighbors just said, okay, we want peace with you too. But they don't.
So I would just interject here to say that I believe that Bibi Netanyahu has a different agenda. And I think what gives a lot of people pause, people that are agnostic on this issue, is when you say something that feels like a very easy moral question, like, do you believe every Palestinian should be killed in an effort to get 250 hostages?
How do you moderate and then like sit there and interject whenever you want? That's clearly just propping up one side of the argument. Like it's just
And people don't say, no, of course not, that would be crazy. Like, we can't just kill 1 million people, women and children, majority children, because we need to get 250 hostages.
I did say no.
And I think that kind of leads into that. You didn't say, like, it wasn't an easy question. You were like, I don't know about this question. It would be Hamas's fault. And I think that might be, and this is really to be constructive here, Ami. I'm not trying to come down. I'm trying to be constructive because I see, I'm actually using you as a conduit to talk to the entire pro-Israel lobby. So do not take any offense to this.
I'm just me.
No. Like, that's why I'm saying I'm using you as a conduit. So please don't take offense to this. But I want to communicate this because there are a lot of people that are pro-Israel who lobby for Israel interests, and I want them to just hear this feedback, because for me, and I think that I am a person that really just does see racial equality. Like, I just do not value Israeli life more than Palestinian life. Period. Innocent life more than one over the other. And when I hear that question and people are not able to give such an easy response, like, obviously no. Like, I want every hostage returned, but not under a circumstance where 1 million Palestinians are going to be obliterated. And yet we see so often that a lot of the pro-Israel voices are not willing to say. They're like, honestly, I've seen people tweet this it looks like we're going to have to go in there until every last Palestinian, and it's Hamas's fault. That doesn't make me, like, I don't think that brings people closer to the pro-Israel side. It makes people go, okay, are we dealing with racial supremacists? Are these good people? How is there no compassion? How is there no, wait a second, no, of course we do want the hostages back, but we also obviously know that we can't kill 1 million people to get back 250 people, because that just sounds radical.
Right, it sounds that way when we talk about war and we look back at history.
Right, but then, like, how do you think the families of those people that are kidnapped are supposed to feel? Like, that's what do you think they're supposed to do? So, like, what? Like, oh, you know, look, I understand your mom, your husband, or your daughter was kidnapped. But if we was to sit there and try to get them back, right? Because they don't want to negotiate. They're not going to sit there and give us a means of getting them back without violence. If we was to sit there and try to go and get her by force, we would kill 3 people. And, to sit there and kill 3 people for just your daughter. I'm sorry, your daughter's hold. Your daughter's hold, right? Is that the answer we give? It's just that at some point, like, you just like people's families and stuff, people's like loved ones and everything, they just shit out of luck. Like, I'm sorry, like, Hamas keeps them like next to the, all the Palestinian stuff. I hope your daughter was like, didn't have any ill will towards the Palestinians. She's gonna be a Palestinian now. Like that's just crazy. That's just wow. Assuming she don't. Boy, being a prisoner or a hostage as those are not good times at all. Okay, so look like my sand output is exactly where I need it to be for me to get more silicon now.
They don't have to. Israel had a monumental collapse of intelligence and security on October 7th. It is not a guarantee, especially after all they've done the last 8 months. It's not a guarantee that October 7th are going to happen left and right if they were to end this war today. If they were to end this war today, October 7th is the worst terrorist attack that's ever been pulled off in the history of the existence of Israel. And there's been lots of terrorist groups, and they've been plotting a lot of things. They pulled off this one big one, which I'm sure if we ever get that investigation, we'd find out, as much as we already know, we'd find out even more about what a massive failure it was on Israel's part. So how about they could plug that up? Israel, for years before October 7th, was propping up Hamas, was underestimating the threat of Hamas, and was relying way too heavily on their, machine gun robots instead of having
please ask how they were propping up like Hamas. I think that'd be such a cool question to ask. Can you give me examples of how exactly were they popping up this terrorist organization, who is also, I mean, dude, keep in mind, right? There are still the elected leaders of said of said you know, of the Palestinians. So like I'd be really interested in like finding that out, how exactly they prop them up.
Soldiers on
Moral to trade 1,000 for. As far as disproportionality. In other words, incentivizing kidnapping and hostage taking on the Palestinian side. That's what those negotiations ultimately lead to. Sinwar, who was traded back to Israel, was the one responsible for October 7th.
Okay, yes, as everyone who's a member of Western civilization, this should be foundational, would agree that yes, it's better to let 1,000 guilty men go free than put one innocent person away. Yes,
Oh, no, that's not what I'm saying. That's,
hold on.
yeah.
So, no,
That's not all what he just said. He just asked you, right? Because you have a problem with like a bunch of innocent lives being killed to save somebody, right, in a hostage situation. So he's asking you that if you have like, because what he's referring to like the how the hostage negotiations go, and the way it works is that typically, right, the Hamas would sit there and you know, they capture whatever is Israeli, and then they would demand like 100 bodies for that one Israeli person. They want 100 like Palestinians that are currently locked up in jail, and give us 100 people and we'll give you one Israeli person. To me, that's like that's crazy. You know, I mean, that is crazy. I mean, it is crazy. But then they usually do it because they're trying to get those people back. They want, you know, they want the hostages, and they want those people returned to be back in Israel. It's crazy. So, and that's what he does. And see how he doesn't want to answer the, like, he's jumping around like he doesn't want to answer the question, because you can tell, you know, at face value it's crazy, because it's not that okay, sure, you want to say that like all of them are not are not a convicted, sure, but a bulk of them, but it's a prison swap. It's for prisoners, right? So a very high decent amount of them likely are committed, right? And then just because they haven't had a chance to go through maybe like the course of stuff, because I don't know like how Israel's like, you know, court docket stuff potentially works, and like how backed up it may or may not be as far as timelines for prosecution. But like at the end of the day, like don't sit there and try to like dress it up to make it seem like there's a significant portion of the people in jail that are potentially innocent, right? Like you would like to hope, assuming Israel's not doing anything crazy, you would like to hope that it is like what, like under, like, it sounds crazy, but like you want to keep that at like 5 to 10% and under, right? Obviously 0 would be the most preferred, but like, you know, I mean, shit, like we don't do, you know, we get caught up with the same shit over here where, like, you know, sometimes like innocent people get locked up, and it's just that's just how it is, you know. It sucks, but we just need to just continue to work hard to do better. I mean, okay, so all right, so my sand look like it's going strong. It looks like it's going strong. Or am I speaking too soon? It looks like it might be going strong. Looks like it. Do I need to put one more, or is it no? I mean, I understand it has like the occasional gaps, but like it essentially tightens up like right here. Right? Because you can kind of see, oh no. Yeah, you can kind of see like the gaps, but after like this little corner part right here, it looks like it's good. My limiting factor here appears to be lead, and it'd be more so if it was fighting. Oh wait, there are resources here, but it's just only titanium though. Okay, let's see how much we got. Ground factory. Yeah, I guess we're going to get that now. But I'm looking for the thing that lets me like upgrade my base. Where's my thing to upgrade my base? That's what I really want. I don't see it nowhere. Yeah, here we go. Core base, well armored, stores more resources than the shard. Yeah, here we go. Oh man, I need half a gram more. This is what I want first, because I want to be able to actually store more resources. All right, come on, let's wrap up this interview.
Exactly what I'm saying. It's
Yeah, after this
better to let
interview,
1,000 people
we'll
who are
probably
guilty
stay
go
up a little
free
bit
than to
more
kill
and
200 trying to save one person. Yes.
It's better to let 1,000 people who could risk attacking Israel again in the future go through it.
What's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? After this, we'll actually do like some street editing, like on our OBS, to try and like tighten up some stuff, Yeah, and then we'll call it a day.
If you are Israeli, there are people whose family, like you said, grew up in Israel, and that is the reason why you feel so attached to this issue. Then more power to you. You should also be allowed to speak about what you want to say. You should never feel fearful in any city in America saying that you want to support Israel. That would be completely wrong. And to the extent that is happening, you will always have my support. And I hope that what everyone listening to this
Nazar,
today,
hey,
is that what
what's
this country
going
needs is
on?
more speech, not less. You're going to agree with Dave some, you're going to agree with Ami some. What we can all agree on is that, I'm better looking than both of them, and you should just keep watching my podcast and my show for that reason. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. And I wish we had more time to do this, but I got a sick daughter, so I've got to go take care of her.
Thank you.
I know how.
Okay. This was it wasn't too bad, but like moderation from the moderation point, like